that one. Thanks to my guests, a California teacher goes on an unbelievable rant about the military in class.
Because we got a bunch of dumb shits over there. Think about the people who you know are over there. Your freaking stupid Uncle Louie or whatever, they're dumb shits. They're not like high-level thinkers. They're not academic people. They're not intellectual people. They're the freaking lowest of our low.
Infuriatingly ignorant. And you can bet your ass that I got something to say about that next. Victor Quinones is 17 years old, a senior at a high school in Southern California, who happened to be wearing a sweatshirt to school one day, on Friday, in fact, with one word across the chest: Marines. Nice tribute to his dad, who happens to be a United States Marine. But now, thanks to a video that's exploding online, we know one of Victor's teachers took notice of that sweatshirt, imploring Victor to explain that he plans to join the military after he graduates from that school. And teacher offered Victor and all of his classmates this lecture in response. And one word of advice for you here. Hold on.
We got all our freaking night vision goggles, all that kind of stuff, and we can't freaking control these dudes wearing freaking robes and chanclas. Because we got a bunch of dumb shits over there. Think about the people who you know are over there. Your freaking stupid Uncle Louie or whatever, they're dumb shits. They're not like high-level thinkers. They're not academic people. They're not intellectual people. They're the freaking lowest of our low, not moral people. You know, I'm not saying they make bad moral decisions, just they're not talented people. The data is in. We don't have a good military. We haven't been able to beat these guys wearing freaking robes and chanclas for 15 years. And you're telling me we couldn't beat the Vietnamese? There are a bunch of people this freaking big going rice at us. Couldn't freaking beat them. Anyway, they're not freaking go. Yeah. Don't wear that in here. So, if you join the military, it's because you had no other option. Because you didn't take care of business academically, because your parents didn't love you enough to push you, and then you didn't love yourself enough to push yourself, which isn't even that hard. It's not even that hard. You just have to focus a little bit. You don't even have to work hard. You just have to focus. I don't understand why we let the freaking military guys come over here and recruit you in school. We don't let pimps come into school. Anyone interested in being a hoe? They're gonna freaking lie to you, and they're gonna tell you, and this is what you guys always tell me: I'm gonna go to the military. Why? Oh, so I can have enough pay for my college. Bull freaking shit. If you were interested in college, would you ever consider the military? No. But you bullshit yourself because you wasted 13 years of your education, and you have no other options. And you're trying to figure out, what am I gonna do? And then they give you all that bullshit. Oh, see the world. See the freaking world. You're not freaking see the world. You're on a freaking ship or something like that. What do you think? You're on vacation? You're freaking stupid.
Gregory SALCIDO was not at school today, and we are learning tonight that he is not coming back either. Where do we even begin? An American teacher teaching kids about the military and equating it to members of, gangs like pimps who traffic in crime and sell their victims into the sex trade. Let's break down this teacher's logic. I mean, let's really break it down here. He lectured this classroom that our troops currently serving overseas are dumb shits, not high-level thinkers, not academic people, the lowest of the low. I assume that Mr. SALCIDO counts himself among the elite cadre of the high-level academics and intellectuals. He's a teacher, right? Which is ironic, because only a dumb shit would say what he just said. And here's where he gets schooled. According to the last statistics from the Defense Department, that's the government body responsible for the military, our military is pretty damn educated. Nearly 83% of military officers had a bachelor's degree or higher. And that compares with just 30% of the general population. And when it comes to those enlisted men and women, the grunts who do all the hard work, many still in their teens, just out of school, 91% of enlisted soldiers had a high school diploma or some college. And that compares with just 59% of their civilian counterparts. Mr. SALCIDO, when you told those kids, quote, we couldn't beat the Vietnamese, they're a bunch of people this freaking big throwing rice at us. Did you look around your classroom to see if there were any Vietnamese American kids? Or was it just fine to slag those people behind their backs? Real brave. Is that your idea of giving the classroom a good education? I don't know if you got your teaching degree from inside a Kellogg's box, but there are definitely a few facts that you should know, even if you never end up inside another classroom. The United States military is not full of dumb shits. It's full of people who are more honorable and brave than you will ever be, like U.S. Marine Lance Corporal William Carpenter. That guy on your screen, he jumped on a grenade in Afghanistan to save his pal, a fellow Marine, and he got a Medal of Honor for it. And he also got a body full of shrapnel that he'll carry with him for the rest of his life. And Chief Petty Officer Edward Byers Jr., United States Navy, that guy, he rushed into a building filled with enemy combatants engaged in hand-to-hand combat, then threw himself on top of an American hostage to shield that guy from getting gunfire. And still somehow, Byers got the hostage out alive. He also got a Medal of Honor. You, sir, got shot by an iPhone. Let that sink in. There are thousands more servicemen like William and Edward who thank the good Lord above were not in your classroom before they signed up for service. And then there's that whole part where you railed on the reasons people enlist in the first place and what kind of future they're destined for. You told those kids, quote, so if you join the military, it's because you have no other options, because you didn't take care of business academically, or your parents didn't love you enough to push you, and then you didn't love yourself enough to push yourself, end quote. Again, Mr. SALCIDO, do your own homework. Did you know that some of the biggest and most profitable companies in America were started by United States veterans? We're talking Remax, FedEx, Walmart, GoDaddy, USAA. And here are a few other famous faces who have changed and improved the American landscape, but not before treading across some dangerous foreign landscapes as soldiers, sailors, airmen, or Marines. Bob Dole, Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, George Carlin, Steve McQueen, Ice-T, Morgan Freeman, Chuck Norris, Mr. T, Johnny Cash, Clint Eastwood, Elvis Presley. 26 of our presidents served in the U.S. military, and I'd say that qualifies them to be among high-level thinkers. And that brings me to my last point. When you admonish that kid wearing the Marines sweatshirt, and I'll quote you, don't ever freaking bring the freaking military to this class, I'd really like to hear you say that if a guy like Senator John McCain were standing in front of you. He took 6 years of beatings inside the Hanoi Hilton, and he could have been freed at any time, could have gone home, but he chose to stay in that torture chamber with his men out of duty and honor, integrity, and grit. And he went on to serve this country for the rest of his life, 31 years as a U.S. Senator. And it's a life that he is holding on to preciously right now as he battles cancer. Now that is a lesson you could have shared with those kids. Instead, you'll be lucky if you ever share another lesson at all. But I sure do hope that you make amends with that kid wearing the Marines sweatshirt. Because when shit goes sideways in America with places like North Korea and Russia and Syria, that's the kid who's going to have your back. He'll be one of the few good men, and you're going to want him on that wall. You're going to need him on that wall. You know, from Los Angeles, CNN correspondent Stephanie Elam. Where is Mr. SALCIDO now? What is his circumstance?
Well, we believe he's actually in his home. We had a CNN producer out there knocking on doors, talking to people.